Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Spotlight. Today I have a guest, Mr. Alan McNair, and he's going to be talking to us about his book. And I'm real excited to hear about his memoirs and his poems and all the literary things that he has to offer to us who love books. So, Mr. McNair, thank you so much for joining me here. Is it all right if I call you Alan?
Please do, and thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So I got just a little bit of a note, and it looks like you've written a book in response or subject title topic being a memoir of your life. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first 70 years, I'm 72 years old.
Okay. And is this your first book or
No, my very first book was a science fiction fantasy epic poem called I Dream of Amaresh.
okay.
Amaresh is the subject of the book. She's a person that came to our world 200 years after a nuclear holocaust of our planet. When the planet was recovering, she had an accident in space which caused her to land here on our world.
Okay. And when was that book written?
Um, I started from a dream that I had in 1965. I started writing about it in 1992 when I felt I was ready to write it. And over the years, I worked on it until 2015. I found Author House and they agreed to publish it.
Awesome. And so do you have other works other than that and then this memoir?
Yeah, I have a couple of unpublished works that are based on this first book. They're Amor Shavandra and um, Communion with the Divine Spirit, which I hope to publish someday soon. But then I did this book from Checkered Cloth, which was a collection of poetry. I got a body of poetry that I decided was ready for publication. So at first, the first edition was through Author House, and it was a paperback edition that included illustrations, some from my original book and some from paintings that I did since then. So I'm both a poet and an artist.
Wow. That's impressive. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background as an author. It sounds like you've done several different types of things. So, tell us about who you are as a person and as an author.
Okay, I come from an upbringing in Niles, Illinois, and my parents were both writers. I have a half brother who passed on who was a writer. My sister is a writer, and she's gone the route of traditional publishing where the publisher seeks her out to publish her work, whereas I decided to initiate my work.
Mhm.
So I did self-publishing. I did not wait for people to be interested. I just developed a book to interest readers.
Mhm. And so, because it sounds like you have a lot of writers in your family, is that something that you aspired to be, or at what age
Yes.
did you begin to be a writer?
Well, at 6 years old, a kindly principal of the school saw my work and said, Alan, you're a writer, just go ahead and write. So with that encouragement and the background of my family, it was easy to do that. And I think about that time when people ask, when there is a day at school where they have the children talk about what they'd like to be when they grow up, I said, I want to be a writer.
Okay. So that you
So
knew quite early then at 6 years old. That's amazing.
yeah, I wrote Westerns and I wrote things based on television shows I saw.
Okay. And so, your first book though was published at what age or in what time period?
1990 when I became homeless.
Okay. And
So what I did was I went to this place called Association House, which encouraged people to develop their talents that had disabilities. And so I managed to borrow the use of a computer at the Association House where I composed most of my book, I Dream Memoirs.
mhm.
I published it informally after having it reviewed by a woman that I know who worked in developing people's potential. She was from a mentor for a while named Bridget O'Shaughnessy. And she looked at the book and she said, what you got in your 17 chapters, there's more to the story, write some more. So I developed into 8 more chapters to a 25 chapter book of poetry, one long epic poem.
Mm-hmm.
Then I also had an art therapist named Daniela Garalt, who has bought many of the things, incarnations of the book. Earlier stages of the book, she has copies of those, and she's actually bought a painting that is the basis for the cover of my book, I Do Remember. So she's been a staunch supporter and encouraged me through the years.
Yeah. And so this particular book that we're talking about today, your memoirs, what
Yeah.
inspired you to write your memoirs?
Basically, I think it was that I came across it in my email a solicitation for memoirs, and I thought, well, I think I could do that. So I did that. Then I took it to an editor who edited my first book, and we worked on the memoir until finally he couldn't do anything more. So I had to cull through the um, editor's notes to compile the book.
Right. That's quite a big work. How long did it take you to accomplish that?
Well, I started in, I think, 2018, and it was like about 220, 220 or 221 that I finally published it.
Right. I think that's a misnomer that people think that people just sit down and write a book in a month or 3 months, and sometimes it takes years. I know it took me 2 or 3 years to write my first book.
Yes,
It's really a big undertaking, and it really requires a lot of self-discipline.
yes, exactly. You have
Yeah,
to have a passion for it.
you do. And so I commend you for that. So talk a little bit about your writing process and how with all the different works that you have and the different things that you've been involved with. What does your writing process look like?
Well, first of all, it begins with a meditation twice a day, which generates a lot of the ideas and a lot of the productivity of doing writing. So usually it's about 8 or 9 in the evening when I decide I've got to write this. I want people to know this. And so I start writing till about sometimes all night.
Hmm.
So my process doesn't know any hours.
Right. I think that's an important tip. Thank you for sharing that people need to understand their writing style. And if they're a morning person, they should write in the morning. If they're an evening person, they should write in the evening. Thank you for sharing that tip. So
Yeah.
your routine is really kind of fluid, but as you get done with your meditation and you have this idea, then you sit down and write until the inspiration is gone. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, the energy is gone. I've got to take this call because I was expecting them to come before the interview. Hold on.
Okay. Okay. We'll put you on pause for just a moment then.
Okay.
So, Alan, tell me a little bit more about your creative muse and how you go about that.
Yes. I have this practice of meditation that I learned early on in 1970 because I wanted to relieve the stress of my mental illness. So I learned this technique, and I found that it really helps um, release deeper stresses and impinge on a person's creativity and productivity. So with the greater creative intelligence from the technique of meditation, one one's thinking is more fluid. You reach the deeper recesses of the mind where there's more creativity and more energy to um, act on your ideas and act on the life you face. So it's been a great stress reliever, but it's been a great creativity tool for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my work, other than my memoir, is based on dreams that I had and experiences that I had in life. So I model my thoughts as to how am I reacting to this situation I'm facing? What do I want other people to know about it? so that they can face similar circumstances with ease and with the confidence.
Exactly. I think that's important that you're able to relay, with your years of experience, that you're able to relay to your readers. Now, how long has your book been out?
It was let me just I'm gonna dig out a copy of it, and then we can go from there. Just take a second. Okay, this is my book,
Okay.
the memoir,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on Amazon for $27 hardcover, $15 for softcover.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up publishing it. Come on, Alan. Okay.
Are you looking for something there?
2022 is the date of
Okay.
publication.
Okay. So it's been out a couple of years. And so, and you've answered my next question was that you have it published on Amazon. So if any of the audience that is listening to this would like to get it, they can get that through Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's the best place to get your book?
Yeah. Usually I try to have a copy available to direct sale, but that's a little bit less often than
Yeah,
if they just go ahead and go to the site.
right. Yeah. And so I noticed that when you shared some information with me before we started this, is that you're a poet and an artist, and that you said something about a checkered cloth. I'm not quite sure what that means. Is that a name of a poem that you did?
What?
Did you write a poem called The Checkered Cloth?
Yes, from Checkered Cloth. That was the first poem that I wrote in 1991
Okay.
based on my growth as a writer. And so I wrote that and then performed it on stage.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's exciting. So, and what stage are you in, a specific city or something you want to share or not?
Yeah, I'm in the Chicago area, the Lincoln Park
Okay.
neighborhood.
Yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah,
Um, So the name of your book that we're talking about today, though, is My Grand Old Lifetime, a memoir by
yes, of course.
Alan McNair. If someone is looking
Yes,
for that on Amazon, that's what you would search for, is My Grand Old Lifetime, a memoir by Alan McNair. So
yes.
the book synopsis is that it spans 7 decades of your life. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Just said this is the book itself spans 7 decades of your life. Is that correct?
Okay. Uh-huh. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what was the question?
I just said that your book spans 7 decades of your life. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And so it covers all your experiences and heartaches and breakdowns and your triumphs.
Exactly. And that's the most fun of realizing that I could
Right.
survive whatever I was encountering.
Right. I'm sure it's an encouragement to the folks who read it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any other books on the horizon? Anything that you're planning out next?
Yes, there's one that's in the works at Reedy called Amrush of Andra,
Okay.
and that's about my character Amrush, who starts with her world is ravaged by a disease, so she goes out into outer space to find the source of that disease and end it.
Wow.
But she ends up here on our world instead.
Wow, that sounds like that is exciting. So it sounds like you've had years of experience and all kinds of heartbreaks and advantages and disadvantages, and you've learned to overcome them, and you're still using your creative forces to produce good for the world. And
Yeah.
I so appreciate that. So is there anything else that you could tell us about your book, Mr. McNair, or about the writing process, and even
Mhm.
the types of books that you read that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I think that part of the writing process is to find a good editor because
And
we're so close to our work emotionally that it's hard to see what other people see in the work other than an editor.
I think that's really a good tip. I agree with you. And so, could you talk a little bit more about how you would find a good editor, or how you found
Well,
yours?
I found it among the people I know.
Okay.
Um, the person that edited my first book edited the last book as well, and he is a fellow meditator. So I
Okay.
knew that when I have an editor, he should be a person of character,
Mhm.
that responsible character. And I found it to be just that.
I think that's another great tip is to find someone in the genre that you're speaking about, so they have somewhat of an experience so they can understand what you're talking about. I think that's really a great tip, and to find someone with great integrity. Good tip. Yeah, I
Right.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Currently, I'm doing a screenplay called A Doppelganger in London. And I have a friend that I encountered in my art world who's willing to work with me on it, and suggested me what an audience would see or hear in the story so that I can tell it better on stage.
Right. Yeah, it's just always fascinating to hear the creative muse of authors and poets and screenwrite and actors and actresses. It's very fascinating. So what would you
Mm,
say to an up and coming person who feels like they have a book or a poem or
mm,
something that they want to share, and they haven't known how to get started? What would you say to them, or how would you encourage them, or what tips would you tell them to take?
I would say that you just have to write what you know and what you feel passionate about. You need to find a responsible person to bounce that idea and share it with them so that you can get a better perspective of what you're communicating. And you have to go through lots of drafts of your work. You can't just, my screenplay was 45 pages long about 2 years ago. It's now 98 pages long. So you just have to work at it, work at it, work at it. And you have to have a driving force within your mind and heart that propels you to do this. And
Right.
I would say very simply what my principal said to me: you're a writer, go write.
Good point. I think that's a very important point, is that you just need to write. Exactly. Well, Mr. McNair, I've so enjoyed having you on today, and I hope that your book goes far, and we hope to see more of your creative muse out there in the future. And my hat is off to you, a fellow writer, and I assume a fellow reader. And we'll look forward to seeing this book, and now that it's out, we can get copies, and also your works that will be coming out in the future. So I just want to say
Yeah,
thank you for coming on and being a guest today, and appreciate all the wisdom and the tips that you've given us.
thank you for letting me share those ideas with you. If I could I have a copy of this interview?
You'll have to check that out with the person that you got the interview from, and I'm going to go ahead and close out the podcast, and then we'll talk about that. Don't hang up, okay? So
Okay,
thank you
go
so
ahead.
much, those of you who are listening in to the Author Spotlight, and we want to encourage you to begin to write. That's a great tip that Mr. McNair shared with us today. He gave us quite a few gems, and I hope that you're encouraged by his story. So we'll see you next time on an author's podcast.